The stagecoach lurched to a stop in front of the general store, and Olivia Carmichael pressed herself against the worn leather seat, her heart hammering as the driver's hand appeared at the door to help her down. She jerked backward instinctively, her gloved fingers trembling as she forced herself to reach for the handle instead, avoiding his touch entirely. The July heat of Fort Garland, Colorado, hit her like a physical wall as she stepped onto the dusty main street in 1878, her traveling dress already clinging to her skin beneath the layers of fabric deemed proper for a lady. She clutched her single carpet bag tighter, scanning the scattered faces of curious townspeople for the man whose letters had promised her a new life, away from everything she needed to escape. Samuel Dalton stood outside the mercantile, hat in hand, watching the stagecoach with a mixture of hope and apprehension that had been building for weeks. At 26, he had resigned himself to a solitary life on his cattle ranch, convinced that no woman would willingly choose the harsh isolation of frontier living. But the loneliness had worn him down, gnawing at him during long evenings in his empty cabin until he finally placed an advertisement in an Eastern newspaper. Her letters had been brief, almost curt, but something in them spoke of desperation that matched his own loneliness. He had pictured a stern-faced spinster, perhaps someone running from poverty or scandal, and told himself it did not matter as long as she was willing to share the burden of this hard life. The woman who stepped down from the coach stole the breath from his lungs. She could not have been more than 22 or 23, with auburn hair swept back beneath a modest bonnet and features that would have been beautiful if not for the tension that held them rigid. But it was her eyes that struck him most, large and brown and holding an expression he had seen before in the eyes of horses that had been beaten. She moved with careful precision, each gesture controlled, her gaze darting to track every person within 20 feet of her position. Samuel approached slowly, keeping his hands visible and his movements measured. "Miss Carmichael, I am Samuel Dalton." Olivia's eyes snapped to him, and he watched her entire body go taut as a bowstring. "Mr. Dalton." Her voice was soft, carefully modulated, the kind of voice someone used when they had learned that volume brought consequences. "Thank you for meeting me." He noticed she did not offer her hand, so he simply gestured toward the hitching post where his wagon waited. "I have provisions to collect. Then we will head to the ranch. It is about an hour's drive. Would you like something to drink first? The hotel has a dining room." "No, thank you. I am fine." The words came quickly, almost rehearsed. She followed him toward the mercantile, maintaining a distance of at least 6 feet, her eyes tracking his every movement like a wary animal. Samuel loaded the supplies he had ordered while Olivia waited by the wagon, her bag clutched in both hands as if it were a shield. He worked methodically, aware of her scrutiny, keeping his movements slow and predictable. Something was profoundly wrong, though he could not yet name it. The other ranchers loading wagons laughed and called greetings to each other, but Samuel found himself modulating his own voice, instinctively keeping it low and even. The drive out of town passed in silence. Samuel tried several times to make conversation, asking about her journey and the weather in Pennsylvania where she had come from, but her answers were monosyllables that discouraged further inquiry. She sat as far from him on the wagon seat as physics would allow, her spine straight as a rifle barrel, her hands folded tightly in her lap. It was when they hit a deep rut and the wagon lurched hard that everything changed. Samuel's hand shot out automatically to steady her, and Olivia flinched so violently she nearly threw herself off the moving wagon. Her arms came up to protect her face, her entire body curling inward in a defensive posture that spoke of terrible experience. "I am sorry," Samuel said immediately, pulling his hand back and gripping the reins with both fists. His stomach had gone cold. "I was just trying to keep you from falling. I will not touch you." Olivia slowly lowered her arms, her face flushed with what might have been shame or fear or both. "Forgive me. I know I am being foolish." "You are not being foolish." Samuel kept his eyes on the road, giving her space to recover her composure. His mind was racing, connecting pieces he wished did not fit together so clearly. The flinching, the careful distance, the way she tracked his hands, the controlled voice. Someone had hurt her, badly and repeatedly. The realization settled in his chest like a stone. They completed the journey in silence, but it was a different quality of silence now, heavy with unspoken understanding. The ranch appeared as they crested a low rise, a sturdy cabin with a barn, and several outbuildings nestled in a valley with the Sangre de Cristo Mountains rising majestically in the distance. A creek ran through the property, lined with cottonwoods that provided the only real shade for miles. Samuel brought the wagon to a gentle stop in front of the cabin. "I will show you the house first. You must be tired." Olivia climbed down before he could move to help her, still clutching her bag. She studied the cabin with an expression he could not read, taking in the covered porch and the curtains visible in the windows. "You have made it look homely." "I tried." Samuel jumped down and began unloading the supplies, making sure to stay on the opposite side of the wagon from her. "My mother helped before she passed 2 years ago. I have done my best to maintain it, but I will admit housekeeping is not my strongest skill." He led her inside, watching as she took in the main room that served as kitchen and living space combined. It was clean, if sparse, with a stone fireplace, a table with 4 chairs, and cabinets he had built himself. A door led to the bedroom on one side and another to a small room he had been using for storage. "I cleared out the small room for you," Samuel said, setting her bag down carefully near the door she could claim as her own. "I will sleep in the main bedroom as before. We can discuss other arrangements after the wedding, if you wish. There is no rush." Olivia's head snapped toward him, her eyes wide with something that might have been hope or disbelief. "Other arrangements?" Samuel removed his hat and ran a hand through his dark hair, suddenly aware of how this conversation could go wrong. "Miss Carmichael, I placed that advertisement because I was lonely and needed help with the ranch. I will be honest that I had hoped for companionship and perhaps eventually a family, but I can see that you have come here running from something, and I will not add to whatever burdens you already carry. We can marry for the legal protections it will give you, but I will not demand anything you are not willing to freely give. You have my word on that." She stared at him for a long moment, her carefully controlled expression cracking to show raw vulnerability beneath. "Why would you make such a promise to a stranger?" "Because you deserve better than whatever brought you here with fear in your eyes." He kept his voice gentle, the way he spoke to spooked horses. "I am not a perfect man, Miss Carmichael, but I have never raised my hand to anything weaker than myself, and I do not intend to start now." Olivia's hands were shaking. She set down her bag and gripped the back of the nearest chair, her knuckles white. "My father was a respected banker in Philadelphia. My mother died when I was 16, and he remarried a year later. His new wife had a son from her first marriage, Edgar. He was 28 when I was 18. Her voice remained steady, but Samuel could hear the effort it cost her. "Edgar decided I would marry him. My father supported the match because it kept money in the family. I refused. Edgar decided that my opinion was irrelevant." Samuel's jaw tightened, but he remained still, letting her speak. "He courted me by finding ways to corner me alone. He would grab my wrist until the bones ground together, twist my arm behind my back, pin me against walls. Always where it would not show. Always with threats of what would happen if I told anyone. He said no one would believe me anyway, that I was hysterical, that women needed firm handling." Her voice dropped to barely above a whisper. "My father walked in on him once, with his hand around my throat. He told me to stop being dramatic and set a wedding date." "How did you escape?" Samuel asked quietly. "My father's sister, my Aunt Catherine, visited from Boston. I managed to speak to her alone and showed her the bruises. She left the next day, but a week later, I received a letter with money and instructions to take the first train west. She told me she had seen an advertisement and arranged everything. The morning I was supposed to marry Edgar, I took my carpet bag and walked out the front door while they were all at breakfast. I have not looked back. Samuel let out a slow breath, his hands curling into fists at his sides before he consciously relaxed them. Thank you for telling me. I know that could not have been easy. I need you to understand that I am not whole. I flinch at shadows. I cannot bear to be touched without warning. I wake from nightmares. You deserve to know what you would be taking on. Everyone carries scars, Miss Carmichael. Some are just more visible than others. He moved slowly toward the stove, making sure she could see exactly what he was doing. I am going to make coffee. Would you like some? Then I will show you the rest of the property, if you are up to it. We can go into town tomorrow to see the minister and make things legal, if you are still willing. I am willing. Her voice was stronger now. I need the protection of marriage, Mr. Dalton. Edgar has my father's resources and connections. Alone, I am vulnerable. As your wife, I have legal standing he cannot easily override. Then we will see it done. Samuel busied himself with the coffee, moving with deliberate care, making no sudden gestures. And you should call me Samuel. We are to be married, after all. Olivia, she offered after a moment. My friends call me Olivia, not Livy. I never liked Livy. Olivia it is. He smiled at her, just a small curve of his lips, nothing that could be construed as threatening. Welcome to the Dalton Ranch, Olivia. I promise you, whatever happens next, you are safe here. She did not smile back, but some of the rigid tension in her shoulders eased by a fraction. It was a start. They rode into Fort Garland the next morning in the wagon, side by side, but with careful space between them. Olivia wore a simple dress of dove gray, the most appropriate thing she owned that was not full mourning. Samuel had put on his cleanest shirt and his Sunday vest, his dark hair slicked back with water that had already begun to dry in the summer heat. The minister, Reverend Josiah Peters, was a kind-faced man in his 50s who asked few questions when Samuel explained they wanted a simple ceremony. His wife served as one witness, and they pulled in the postmaster for the second. The vows were traditional, and when the time came to seal the marriage with a kiss, Samuel simply pressed his lips to Olivia's forehead, brief and chaste. She stood rigid throughout, but did not pull away. They signed the marriage certificate in the Reverend's neat parlor, making it legal and binding. Olivia Carmichael became Olivia Dalton, and Samuel watched her sign the new name with a pen that trembled slightly in her grip. He wanted to reassure her, to promise again that this was just protection, just paperwork, but the minister and his wife were watching with benevolent interest, and he said nothing. They stopped at the general store on the way out of town. Samuel needed to introduce his new wife to the community, and Olivia would need accounts in her own name at the mercantile and the bank. The proprietor of the mercantile, a cheerful woman named Maud Harrison, welcomed Olivia with genuine warmth and immediately began pointing out which items were freshest and which suppliers were most reliable. You will need to come to the church social next month, Maud said, wrapping the sugar and flour Samuel had ordered. All the ranch wives attend. It is the only civilized gathering we manage out here, and it is a good chance to trade recipes and news. Olivia glanced at Samuel before responding. That sounds lovely, thank you. At the bank, they established Olivia's name on Samuel's accounts and set up a small household fund in her name alone. The banker, a meticulous man named Theodore Walsh, processed the paperwork with professional efficiency. When everything was signed and filed, Samuel felt marginally better knowing Olivia had legal access to money if she needed it. If Edgar somehow tracked her down, she would not be trapped by lack of resources. The ride back to the ranch was quieter than the ride in had been. Olivia seemed thoughtful, her gaze fixed on the mountains in the distance. Finally, she spoke. Why are you doing all this? The separate room, the money in my name, the careful distance. Most men would have demanded their husbandly rights by now. Samuel considered his answer carefully. My father died when I was 12. A bull gored him during a roundup. My mother was left with a ranch to run, 2 young sons, and debts my father had not mentioned. The neighboring ranchers thought she should sell out and move to town, marry again, let a man handle things. She refused. She worked that ranch for 14 more years, paid every debt, and proved everyone wrong. He glanced at Olivia, making sure she was listening. When I was 15, one of the hands she hired got drunk and tried to force himself on her in the barn. I was too young and too small to stop him. But my older brother James was not. James beat the man bloody and threw him off the property. We found out later he had been run out of Texas for the same behavior. My mother never reported it to the sheriff because she was afraid of what people would say, how it might damage her reputation. What happened to James? Olivia asked softly. He left to join the cavalry a year later, got killed at the Little Bighorn in '76. Samuel's hands tightened on the reins. Before he left, he made me promise to look after Mother and to never become the kind of man who used his strength against those weaker. He said the world had enough bullies and cowards, and we needed to be better. I am sorry about your brother. So am I. He was a good man. Samuel cleared his throat. Anyway, that is why I made a promise to a good man, and I intend to keep it. Besides, it is just common decency. I do not understand men who think marriage is a license for cruelty. They arrived back at the ranch as the sun reached its zenith. Samuel unhitched the horses while Olivia took the lighter packages inside. He worked slowly, talking to the horses in a low murmur, giving Olivia space to settle in. When he entered the cabin, she had already put away the supplies and was standing at the window looking out at the valley. It is beautiful here, she said without turning. Lonely but beautiful. It is isolated, Samuel acknowledged. The nearest neighbors are the Hoffmans, about 5 miles west. Good people. They have 3 daughters, all younger. Then there is the Martinez family to the south, about the same distance. They run sheep, which causes some tension with the cattle ranchers, but they have never caused me any trouble. Do you have cattle? About 200 head last count. It is not a huge operation, but it is enough for one man to manage with occasional hired help during roundup. I have been thinking about expanding, getting into horse breeding maybe, but that takes capital I do not quite have yet. He moved to the fireplace and began building up the fire. I should teach you to shoot, if you do not already know how. Olivia turned from the window, her eyebrows raised. Shoot! Rifle and pistol both. You are isolated out here when I am working the far pastures. We have mountain lions, bears occasionally, and 2-legged predators are not unheard of. You should know how to defend yourself. He kept his tone matter-of-fact, practical. Not today, you are probably exhausted. But soon. She studied him for a long moment. You truly mean to treat me as a partner, not a possession. I do. I have never met a man like you, Samuel Dalton. I am not special, Olivia. I am just trying to be decent. The world should not make that remarkable, but I suppose it does. He straightened from the fireplace. I need to check on the cattle and fix a fence in the north pasture. I will likely be gone most of the afternoon. Will you be all right here alone? He watched anxiety flicker across her face before she squared her shoulders. Yes, I will be fine. I can start preparing supper, if you tell me what you typically eat. They spent a few minutes discussing provisions and preferences. Samuel showed her where everything was stored, then collected his tools and headed out. At the door, he paused. Olivia, if anything happens, if you need help, there is a rifle above the door and a pistol in the top kitchen drawer. The horses in the barn are all trained to saddle. Do not hesitate to do whatever you need to do to stay safe. She nodded, her expression unreadable. Samuel left, hoping he was not making a mistake by leaving her alone so soon. But she needed space, needed time to understand that he meant what he said about her freedom and safety. The afternoon work went quickly. Samuel repaired the broken fence, checked the water levels in the creek, and rode through the herd counting heads and looking for signs of illness or injury. Everything seemed in good order. The physical labor helped settle his mind, giving him time to think through the situation he had taken on. He had known getting a mail order bride was a risk, but he had imagined financial problems, homesickness, perhaps incompatibility. He had not imagined this: the weight of someone else's trauma, the responsibility of helping someone heal while keeping careful boundaries. Samuel had no idea if he was capable of it, but he had made promises, both to Olivia and to his brother's memory, and he would do his best to keep them. When he returned to the cabin, as the sun began its descent toward the mountains, he could smell cooking from 50 yards away. He took care of his horse first, rubbing the animal down and making sure he had food and water before heading to the house. At the door, he knocked, calling out, "Olivia, it is Samuel. I am coming in." He heard her voice call back permission, and he entered to find the table set and a pot of stew bubbling over the fire. Olivia looked up from slicing bread, and for a moment Samuel could see what she might look like without fear, her face soft in the golden light. "That smells incredible," he said honestly. "It is just stew, nothing fancy. It is better than anything I have cooked in 2 years." He washed his hands in the basin by the door, making sure she could see what he was doing. "I appreciate the effort." They ate together at the table, the first meal in their new life together. The food was good, and Samuel told her so repeatedly until she finally allowed a small smile to cross her face. They spoke of practical things, the supplies that needed replenishing, the weather patterns, the quirks of the cast iron stove, safe topics that did not require vulnerability from either of them. After supper, Samuel insisted on cleaning up while Olivia retreated to her room. He worked methodically, washing dishes and banking the fire for the night, then stepped out onto the porch to look at the stars. The night was clear, the Milky Way a bright river across the sky, and the air had cooled to a comfortable temperature. He sat on the porch step and let the peace of the evening settle over him. The door opened softly behind him, and Olivia stepped out, wrapped in a shawl despite the warmth. "May I join you?" "Of course. It is your home, too." She sat on the opposite end of the step, maintaining distance, and tilted her head back to look at the stars. "I have never seen so many. In Philadelphia, there are too many lights. Out here, the sky is the best show around." Samuel pointed out the constellations he knew, naming them in the patient voice his mother had used when teaching him. Olivia listened, asking occasional questions, and slowly the tension in her shoulders eased. "Thank you," she said finally, "for today, for all of this. I know I am not what you expected when you placed that advertisement." "You are not," Samuel agreed, "but that does not mean I regret it. Give it time, Olivia. Let us just take things one day at a time and see where we end up." She nodded and stood, pulling the shawl tighter. "Good night, Samuel." "Good night, Olivia." He listened to her footsteps retreat into the cabin, the soft click of her door closing. Samuel remained on the porch a while longer, thinking about the unexpected turns life took and wondering if he was strong enough to be what this broken woman needed. He hoped so. He truly hoped so. The next few weeks fell into a rhythm that was both comfortable and carefully maintained. Samuel rose before dawn to tend the animals and handle the heavier ranch work. Olivia managed the house, the garden, and the chickens he had not mentioned because they had been his mother's domain and he had barely kept them alive. She coaxed the neglected vegetable patch back into productivity and somehow made the cabin feel like a home rather than just a place to sleep. They navigated around each other like dancers learning a new pattern. Samuel learned to announce himself before entering a room, to keep his hands visible and his movements predictable. He never raised his voice, even when a fence post fell and smashed his thumb, and he made sure Olivia always had clear exits. In return, Olivia slowly began to relax, her startle reflex becoming less pronounced, her careful distance shrinking by inches. True to his word, Samuel taught her to shoot. He started with the rifle, setting up targets in the meadow behind the barn. The first time he stood behind her to adjust her stance, he felt her entire body lock up, and he immediately stepped back. "Sorry," he said. "I should have asked first. May I touch your elbow to adjust your aim?" She took a breath and nodded. "Yes, I am sorry, I am trying." "Do not apologize. You are doing fine." He made the adjustment with quick, impersonal efficiency, then stepped well back. "Now breathe out slowly and squeeze the trigger." The rifle kicked against her shoulder, and the shot went wide. Olivia scowled at the target. "That was terrible. That was your first shot ever. Try again." By the end of the afternoon, she was hitting the target more often than not. Samuel was impressed by her focus and determination. She approached learning to shoot the way someone approached, learning a language they absolutely needed to survive, with grim concentration and methodical practice. They progressed to the pistol the following week. It was lighter, but harder to aim, and Olivia's hands were small enough that the grip was awkward. Samuel adjusted his teaching, focusing on close-range accuracy rather than distance shooting. "If you ever need to use this," he said seriously, "it will be because something or someone is close and dangerous. Do not hesitate. Do not warn them. Just shoot for the center of the body and keep shooting until the threat stops." Olivia met his eyes. "You are teaching me to kill. I am teaching you to survive. There is a difference." He holstered his own pistol. "I pray you never need it, Olivia. But if the choice is between your life and someone who means you harm, I want you alive." She practiced until her hands ached, until she could draw and fire with reasonable speed, until Samuel was satisfied she could handle herself in an emergency. On the ride back to the cabin, she was quiet, processing. "Edgar carried a pistol," she said finally. "He would show it to me sometimes, clean it in front of me while making casual comments about accidents. I was terrified of it. And now? Now I am glad I know how to use one. It feels like power, like control I have not had before." She looked at him. "Thank you for this." "You are welcome." August arrived with scorching heat and the need for Samuel to move the cattle to higher pastures where the grass was still green. It would require 3 days of hard riding, camping rough, and he hated leaving Olivia alone for that long. He discussed it with her over breakfast one morning, laying out the necessity and his concerns. "I will be fine," Olivia said firmly. "You have taught me to shoot. I know how to care for the animals, and the Hoffmans are only 5 miles away if I need help. I know you are capable. I just worry." "Then take me with you." Samuel nearly dropped his coffee cup. "What?" "Take me with you. I can ride at least moderately well. I can help with the cattle. Why should I sit here alone when I could be useful?" She leaned forward, her expression more animated than he had yet seen. "I have been trapped in drawing rooms and parlors my entire life, Samuel. Let me see what this life actually involves." He considered it. The work would be hard, and sleeping rough was uncomfortable at best. But she had a point, and he found he liked the idea of her company, of sharing this part of his life with her. "It will not be easy. Long hours in the saddle, basic food, sleeping on the ground. I do not care. Please." "All right, then. We leave at first light tomorrow. Wear your sturdiest clothes." Olivia's smile was like sunrise, bright and warming. Samuel felt something shift in his chest and had to look away, suddenly aware that his feelings for his wife were becoming considerably more complicated than simple responsibility. They set out the next morning with 2 horses, supplies for 4 days to be safe, and a sense of adventure that Samuel had not felt in years. Olivia rode one of his gentler mares, and though her form was not perfect, she stayed in the saddle and kept pace without complaint. Moving the cattle was hot, dusty work that required patience and persistence. The animals were stubborn and contrary, as cattle always were, and Samuel found himself explaining the quirks of bovine behavior while Olivia listened and learned. She took to the work with surprising aptitude, understanding quickly how to position herself to guide the herd without spooking them. By noon, they had the cattle moving in the right direction. Samuel led them toward the high meadows where he had grazing rights, following trails his father had used and his grandfather before that. The landscape changed as they climbed, the scrub giving way to pine forests, and then to broad meadows thick with grass and wildflowers. They made camp that evening beside a stream that tumbled down from the peaks. Samuel set up a simple camp while Olivia gathered firewood, and they worked together with an ease that felt natural, unforced. He cooked beans and bacon in a skillet over the fire, while Olivia made coffee in the battered pot he had brought. "This is beautiful," Olivia said, looking around at the mountains that rose on all sides, their peaks still touched with snow despite the summer heat. "I had no idea such places existed." "Colorado is full of surprises." Samuel handed her a plate of food. "Harsh and dangerous, but beautiful in a way that makes your chest ache sometimes." They ate watching the sun set over the mountains, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple and red. As darkness fell, Samuel laid out bedrolls on opposite sides of the fire, maintaining the careful distance they had established. He watched Olivia settle into her blankets, fully clothed as she would be with a stranger, and wished there was a way to tell her that he was beginning to care for her beyond duty, beyond the promises he had made. But it was too soon, the wounds too fresh. So he said nothing. The second day brought harder work. They pushed the cattle into the high meadows and checked the primitive fence lines Samuel maintained to keep the herd contained. Two sections needed repair, and Samuel worked with Olivia, handing him tools and learning how to mend barbed wire fences. She was quick and clever, asking good questions, and Samuel found himself explaining more than he had intended about ranch management and long-term planning. "You think like a businessman," Olivia observed, watching him calculate head counts and grass availability. "Not just a rancher. Out here, you have to be both or you fail. Ranching is hard work, but it is also math and planning and understanding markets." He finished the fence repair and straightened, wiping sweat from his forehead. "My mother taught me that. She said brawn without brains just meant you worked hard at failing." She sounds like she was remarkable. She was, you would have liked her. Samuel realized as he said it that he meant it. His mother would have approved of Olivia, of her strength and determination, her refusal to be defined by what had been done to her. That night, the temperature dropped sharply. Samuel woke near midnight to find the fire had burned low, and Olivia was shivering in her blankets, clearly cold but not wanting to wake him. He rebuilt the fire and brought his own blanket over to her. "Here," he said softly. "Put this over your blankets. It will help." She looked up at him, her eyes reflecting the firelight. "What about you?" "I will be fine. I have slept in worse conditions." "Samuel, we could share. For warmth. I trust you not to take advantage." His heart stuttered. "Are you sure?" In answer, Olivia shifted to one side of her bedroll. Samuel lay down carefully beside her, leaving inches between them, and spread his blanket over both of them. The warmth was immediate and welcome. They lay there in the darkness, close but not touching, the fire crackling between them and the stars wheeling overhead. "Thank you," Olivia whispered, "for everything, for being patient, for being kind, for being nothing like the men I knew before." "You are welcome," Samuel whispered back. He wanted to reach for her hand, to close that final distance, but he held himself still. This was enough. This was more than he had hoped for. They slept that way, side by side in the mountain night, and when Samuel woke at dawn, he found Olivia had rolled toward him in her sleep, her head resting against his shoulder. She looked peaceful in the early light, younger than her years, the lines of tension smoothed from her face. He lay still, not wanting to wake her, savoring the simple comfort of her presence. When she finally stirred, her eyes flew open and she started to pull away. "I am sorry, I did not mean to crowd you." "You did not," Samuel said gently. "I did not mind." Something passed between them in that moment, some acknowledgement of the growing connection neither had planned. Olivia did not immediately retreat, and Samuel did not move away, and they lay there for a heartbeat longer before the demands of the day pulled them apart. The ride back to the ranch felt different. They talked more freely, sharing stories from their childhoods, their hopes and fears for the future. Olivia told him about her mother, a gentle woman who had died of influenza, and how her father had become a stranger after remarrying. Samuel told her about James, about the brother who had been his hero and best friend, and how his death had left a hole that nothing had quite filled. "You miss him terribly," Olivia observed. "Every day. He was supposed to come home and help run the ranch. We had plans." Samuel shook his head. "But life does not care about our plans." "No, it does not." Olivia was quiet for a moment. "I am glad I ended up here, though, with you, even if it was not what either of us planned." "So am I," Samuel said, and meant it with an intensity that surprised him. They arrived home as the sun set, both exhausted and dusty and satisfied with the work accomplished. Samuel took care of the horses while Olivia went to check on the chickens and garden. When he entered the cabin, he found her already pumping water to heat for washing. "Go ahead," he said. "I will clean up after you are done." They took turns washing away the grime of travel behind the privacy screen in the corner. When Samuel emerged, clean and wearing fresh clothes, Olivia had laid out a simple supper of bread and cheese and the last of the preserves. They ate together as the cabin cooled in the evening breeze. Neither spoke of the night spent side by side, but it hung in the air between them, a memory that had shifted something fundamental. They were no longer strangers playing roles. They were two people who were beginning to genuinely care what happened to each other. September brought cooler temperatures and the constant work of preparing for winter. Samuel took on 2 temporary hands for the fall roundup, young men from town who needed the work. He made sure Olivia was comfortable with their presence before allowing them near the cabin, and he watched with satisfaction as she handled herself with increasing confidence around the strangers. The roundup took 2 weeks of hard, dirty work. They drove the cattle back down from the summer pastures, separated out the calves for branding, and selected which animals would be sold at market. Olivia worked alongside them, learning by doing, earning the respect of the hired hands with her willingness to tackle any job. On the last night of the roundup, they gathered around the fire while one of the hands, a Mexican boy named Carlos, played guitar and sang songs in Spanish. Olivia sat beside Samuel, close enough that their shoulders touched, and Samuel felt the rightness of it settle into his bones. This was what he had been missing, this sense of companionship and partnership, of not facing the world alone. After the hands had been paid and sent back to town, Samuel and Olivia settled back into their routine. But it was different now, easier. Olivia no longer jumped when Samuel entered a room. She sought out his company, walking out to wherever he was working to bring him water or simply to talk. The careful distance between them had narrowed to comfortable closeness. One evening in late September, Samuel was fixing a harness in the barn when Olivia appeared in the doorway. "May I ask you something?" "Of course." She came closer, watching his hands as he worked the leather. "When you look at me, what do you see?" Samuel set down the harness and gave her his full attention. "I see a woman who survived something that would have broken a lesser person. I see strength and determination and unexpected joy when you do not think anyone is watching. I see someone who is learning to trust again, slowly, carefully. And I see someone beautiful inside and out, though I do not think you believe that yet." Olivia's eyes had gone bright with unshed tears. "Edgar used to tell me I was nothing, that I was plain and difficult and no one else would want me, that I should be grateful he was willing to marry me despite my deficiencies. Edgar was a liar and a bully. Samuel stood slowly, giving her time to adjust to his movement. You are none of those things. Olivia, and I want you to know that what started as a practical arrangement has become something more for me. I care about you, genuinely care, not just as a responsibility, but as a person I want in my life. I am not asking for anything in return. I just wanted you to know. She stepped closer, closing the gap between them until only a foot separated them. I care about you too, more than I thought I would be capable of caring again. You have been patient and kind and good, and I am beginning to believe that not all men are monsters. May I hold you? Samuel asked quietly. Just hold you, nothing more. Olivia nodded, and Samuel slowly, carefully drew her into his arms. She was stiff at first, old fears rising, but he held her loosely, ready to release her the instant she wanted. Gradually, she relaxed against him, her head coming to rest on his chest, her arms tentatively circling his waist. They stood like that in the barn, holding each other as the evening light faded, and Samuel felt something in his chest expand and settle. This was what he wanted, this connection, this trust. He stroked her hair gently, letting her set the pace, and when she finally pulled back, her eyes were wet, but her smile was genuine. Thank you, she said, for being exactly who you are. October arrived with the first hard frost and the need to prepare the ranch for winter in earnest. Samuel spent his days cutting firewood, repairing the barn roof, and making sure all the animals were healthy and had adequate shelter. Olivia preserved vegetables from the garden, mended clothes, and began the endless task of spinning and knitting that would provide warm clothing for the winter ahead. They had fallen into the habit of sitting together in the evenings, talking by the fire or reading from the few books Samuel owned. Often now, Olivia would sit close enough that their legs touched, or she would rest her head on his shoulder while he read aloud. The physical closeness was still carefully negotiated, but it was happening, trust-building touch by touch. One evening, Samuel looked up from his book to find Olivia watching him with an expression he could not quite read. "What is it?" "I have been thinking," she said slowly. "We have been married almost 4 months now. You have kept your promise about giving me space and time. But Samuel, I do not want to live the rest of my life afraid. I want to reclaim what Edgar tried to take from me." Samuel's heart began to beat faster. "What are you saying?" "I am saying that I trust you. I care about you. And I would like our marriage to be real in all ways if you are willing. But I need you to be patient with me. I may still have moments of fear or panic. I cannot promise I will not flinch or freeze sometimes." Samuel set down his book and took her hands carefully in his. "Olivia, I am willing, more than willing, but only if you are certain. There is no rush. I will wait as long as you need. I am certain." Her voice was steady. "I am still scared, but I am more scared of letting fear rule my entire life. You have shown me what kindness looks like, what partnership looks like. I want more of that. I want all of it." He lifted her hands to his lips and kissed them gently. "Then we will take it slow. We will stop whenever you need to stop. And tomorrow or next week or next month, we will figure it out together. All right? All right." They did not rush. Samuel courted his own wife, asking permission before every touch, every kiss, giving her time to adjust and accept, and eventually to desire. When they finally came together, weeks later, it was tender and careful and healing for them both. Olivia cried afterward, but they were good tears, tears of relief and release, and Samuel held her through it, marveling at the trust she had given him. Winter settled over the valley in earnest, bringing snow that transformed the landscape into something magical and isolating. Samuel and Olivia were snowed in for days at a time, dependent entirely on each other for company and comfort. They grew closer in the forced intimacy, learning each other's habits and preferences, arguing occasionally, and learning to navigate disagreements with respect and compromise. One evening, during a particularly fierce blizzard, Olivia was teaching Samuel to play chess with the set she had brought from Philadelphia when she suddenly stopped mid-move. "I need to tell you something." Samuel looked up from the board. "What is it?" "I received a letter yesterday from Aunt Catherine. I did not want to worry you, but now I think you should know." She took a breath. "Edgar has been looking for me. He hired investigators. They traced me as far as Denver, but then the trail went cold because I was using a different name in my letters to her. She is being careful, but she wanted me to know in case he somehow finds me here." Samuel felt cold settle in his stomach that had nothing to do with the weather outside. "Does she think he will find you?" "She does not know. She said he has become obsessed, that he will not accept that I got away. My father has washed his hands of the whole situation. But Edgar has his own money and apparently nothing but time." Olivia's hands were shaking. "Samuel, I am scared. Not of being here with you, but of what he might do if he finds us. He is not rational about this. Then we will be prepared." Samuel reached across the chessboard to take her hands. "You are not alone anymore, Olivia. If Edgar comes here, he will have to go through me. And I promise you I will not let him take you. I do not want you hurt because of me. And I do not want you living in fear. We will handle this together." He squeezed her hands gently. "Tomorrow, when the weather clears, I will ride to town and speak to the sheriff. We will make sure everyone knows to watch for strangers asking questions, and we will practice with the guns again. Make sure you are sharp, all right?" Olivia nodded, blinking back tears. "I thought I was safe here. I thought I had escaped." "You are safe here. I will make sure of it." The weather broke after 3 days, and Samuel rode into Fort Garland to speak with Sheriff Marcus Grant, a competent man in his 40s who took the threat seriously. Samuel described Edgar and the situation, and the sheriff promised to alert his deputies and put out word to watch for anyone matching the description. "If he shows up, we will handle it legal-like," the sheriff said. "But Mr. Dalton, you have a right to defend your home and your wife. If this man comes onto your property, meaning harm, the law will back you." Samuel returned home to find Olivia had cleaned all the weapons and laid them out for practice. They spent the afternoon drilling, running through scenarios, making sure Olivia could handle herself under pressure. She was grim and focused, and Samuel was reminded again of her core strength, the steel beneath the fear. The weeks passed without incident. November turned to December, and Christmas approached. Samuel surprised Olivia with a small decorated tree he cut from the property and presents he had ordered secretly from Denver, fabric for a new dress, a leather-bound journal, and a locket that had belonged to his mother. Olivia gave him a new saddle blanket she had woven herself and a photograph of the two of them that she had arranged during a trip to town, their first portrait as a married couple. They celebrated quietly, just the two of them, and Samuel found himself happier than he had been in years. Olivia was laughing more, the shadows in her eyes receding, and their marriage had become something real and deep and valuable. He loved her, he realized, fully, completely, without reservation. And though she had not said the words yet, he believed she loved him too. It was 2 days after Christmas when Edgar arrived. Samuel was in the barn repairing tack when he heard a horse approach. He looked out to see a well-dressed man on a fine horse riding up to the cabin, and something in the way the man carried himself made Samuel's instincts scream warning. He grabbed his rifle and moved quickly but quietly toward the house. Edgar Carmichael was exactly what Samuel had expected, handsome in a cold way, expensively dressed, and radiating arrogant entitlement. He had already dismounted and was approaching the cabin door when Samuel called out, "That is far enough. State your business." Edgar turned, his expression shifting from surprise to calculation as he took in Samuel's work clothes and the rifle held casually but competently. "I am looking for someone. A woman, early 20s, auburn hair. I was told someone matching her description might be living out this way." Nobody like that here. I suggest you head back to town. Now, I do not think that is quite true. Edgar's smile did not reach his eyes. You see, I have been tracking Olivia Carmichael for months, and I know she came to Fort Garland to marry a rancher named Dalton. You would not be lying to me, would you? The cabin door opened, and Olivia stepped out, a pistol held steady in both hands, aimed directly at Edgar. Get off our property, Edgar. Edgar's expression transformed, becoming something eager and possessive that made Samuel's skin crawl. Olivia, there you are. I have been searching everywhere for you. It is time to come home and stop this foolish game. I am home, and the only game was the one you played, pretending you had any right to me. Olivia's voice was hard, controlled. Leave now, or I will shoot you for trespassing. You would not dare. You do not have the spine for violence. Edgar took a step forward, and Samuel immediately moved between him and Olivia, his rifle coming up. She might not, Samuel said coldly. But I do. You are on my property threatening my wife. Leave now, or I will put you down like the rabid dog you are. Edgar's eyes narrowed. So you are the fool who married her. Did she tell you about her hysteria? Her deficiencies? She needs firm handling, my friend. I was doing you a favor, actually, coming to take this burden off your hands. The only burden I see is you. Last chance. Leave. I have legal papers, Edgar said, pulling documents from his coat. From her father giving me guardianship. She is not mentally competent to make her own decisions. That marriage is not valid. That is a lie, Olivia said. My father has no such authority. I am of age and married legally. Those papers are worthless. Are they? Shall we test that in court? I have lawyers, money, connections. You are nobody, living in the middle of nowhere with a dirt farmer. Edgar's smile was vicious. I will bury you both in legal proceedings. Or Olivia can come with me now. Quietly, and I will forget this ever happened. Samuel felt rage boiling in his chest, but kept his voice level. You have 3 seconds to get on that horse and ride out of here. 1. You are making a mistake. 2. Edgar looked between them, clearly calculating odds. Samuel saw the moment the man decided to take a risk and lunged toward Olivia. Samuel did not hesitate. He slammed the rifle butt into Edgar's stomach, doubling him over, then followed with an uppercut that sent the man sprawling in the dirt. Stay down, Samuel ordered, his rifle now pointed directly at Edgar's head. Olivia, go get the sheriff. Ride fast. But Olivia was already moving, running for the barn. Edgar, gasping on the ground, managed to wheeze out, You have made an enemy, Dalton. I will destroy you for this. You can try. Samuel kept the rifle steady. But you are going to have to do it from a jail cell or from back east because you are not welcome in this territory. It took an hour for Olivia to return with Sheriff Grant and 2 deputies. Edgar had recovered enough to be belligerent, threatening lawsuits and claiming assault. But the sheriff listened to both sides and examined Edgar's papers with a practiced eye. These are not legal, he said finally. Mr. Carmichael here has no authority over Mrs. Dalton. She is a married woman of legal age, and he is trespassing on private property after being told to leave. He nodded to his deputies. Arrest him. We will hold him for 3 days, then escort him to the Colorado border with instructions not to return. Edgar erupted in protests, but the deputies were unmoved. As they dragged him away, still shouting threats, Olivia collapsed against Samuel, shaking. He wrapped his arms around her, holding her close while she cried with relief and residual fear. It is over, he murmured into her hair. He is gone. You are safe. He will try again. He said he would destroy us. Let him try. We are not alone out here, Olivia. We have the law on our side, the community, each other. He is one man with delusions of power. He will lose. Samuel pulled back enough to look at her face. You were so brave. I am proud of you. I was terrified. Brave is not being scared. Brave as being scared and standing your ground anyway. You did that. You faced him down. They went inside, both needing the comfort of walls and locked doors. Samuel made coffee while Olivia sat wrapped in a blanket, processing. Eventually she spoke. I really am free, aren't I? I have you, the law, everything he doesn't. He can't hurt me anymore. He cannot hurt you anymore, Samuel confirmed. And if he is stupid enough to try, he will regret it. The weeks that followed were tense as they waited to see if Edgar would make good on his threats. But word came through the sheriff that Edgar had been escorted to the Kansas border and seen boarding a train east. Apparently, the reality of Western justice had convinced him that Olivia was not worth the trouble. With Edgar's departure, the last shadow lifted. Olivia bloomed like a flower finally getting sunlight, her laughter coming freely, her confidence building daily. She was no longer the frightened woman who had stepped off the stagecoach 7 months earlier. She was Samuel's partner in every sense, working beside him, planning with him, building a future together. Spring arrived, bringing new life to the valley. Olivia announced she was pregnant in April, her face glowing with joy and nervousness. Samuel felt his heart expand to impossible proportions, overwhelmed by the realization that they were creating a family, something neither had been sure would happen. The pregnancy was healthy but not easy. Olivia suffered from terrible morning sickness that lasted well into her second trimester. Samuel hovered and fretted until she finally ordered him to stop treating her like she was made of glass. Women have been having babies since the beginning of time, she reminded him. I will survive this. I know, I just worry. Worry less, help more. I need you to trust that I will tell you if something is wrong. So Samuel threw himself into preparing for their child, building a cradle from oak, working extra hours to ensure they had money saved, and generally driving Olivia to affectionate exasperation with his overplanning. Their son was born in November 1879 during the first snowfall of the season. Dr. William Harris came out from town, along with Maud Harrison to assist. Samuel paced outside the bedroom for 6 hours, listening to sounds that terrified him, until finally a baby's cry split the air. Maud emerged, smiling broadly. You have a son, Mr. Dalton. A healthy, loud son. And your wife is tired but fine. Samuel entered the bedroom to find Olivia propped up against pillows, exhausted and beautiful, holding a red-faced, squalling infant. Meet your son, she said softly. Samuel approached slowly, awed by the tiny person. He is perfect. He has your nose. Poor child. Samuel sat carefully on the edge of the bed, reaching out to touch the baby's impossibly small hand. Tiny fingers wrapped around his thumb, and Samuel felt his world shift completely. What should we name him? I was thinking James, Olivia said quietly, after your brother, if that is all right with you. Samuel's eyes burned with unexpected tears. James Dalton. He would have been honored. They named their son James William Dalton, honoring both Samuel's brother and the doctor who had delivered him safely. The baby was colicky and demanding, keeping them both awake for weeks, but Samuel found he did not mind the exhaustion. This was life, real and precious, and exactly what he wanted. Watching Olivia with their son, Samuel was continually amazed by her transformation. The fearful woman who had flinched at raised hands had become a fierce, confident mother who would clearly defend her child against anything. She had not just survived her trauma, she had overcome it, grown beyond it, become someone stronger for having endured. One evening, when James was finally sleeping peacefully in his cradle, Olivia and Samuel sat together by the fire. She was tucked against his side, his arm around her shoulders, and they watched the flames in comfortable silence. I love you, Olivia said suddenly. I have for months, but I was afraid to say it, afraid it would somehow break the spell, make this all disappear. But Samuel, I love you so much it sometimes hurts. Samuel turned to look at her, his heart full. I love you too. I think I have since that day in the mountains when you trusted me enough to share my blanket. You are the best thing that ever happened to me, Olivia Dalton. She kissed him then, slow and sweet, and Samuel tasted happiness in it, the kind that was earned through hardship and patience and choosing each other every single day. The years that followed were good ones. The ranch prospered, and they hired permanent hands to help manage the expanded operation. Olivia established herself as a respected member of the community, helping organize the church social and teaching other ranch wives to read and write. She never forgot where she had come from or what she had survived, and she became a quiet advocate for women trapped in situations like hers had been. They had three more children, a daughter named Catherine, after the aunt who had helped Olivia escape, then twin boys they named Henry and Thomas. The cabin expanded to accommodate the growing family. Rooms added on as needed, and the valley rang with children's laughter instead of lonely silence. Samuel taught his children to ride and shoot, to understand the land and respect it, and most importantly, to be kind. James grew up to be steady and responsible like his namesake. Catherine inherited her mother's fierce determination and her father's practical nature. The twins were wild and reckless in the way of all younger children, keeping their parents on constant alert. Olivia never saw Edgar again. They heard through Aunt Catherine that he had eventually married someone else, a timid girl from a wealthy family, and moved to California. Olivia felt pity for his wife, but mostly gratitude that she had escaped, that she had found Samuel and this life instead. As their 25th wedding anniversary approached, Samuel and Olivia took a rare trip without the children, leaving them in the capable hands of their oldest son, James, now a responsible young man of 23. They rode up to the high meadows where they had first shared a blanket all those years ago and made camp under the stars. "Do you ever regret it?" Samuel asked as they lay side by side, watching the Milky Way. "Taking a chance on a stranger's advertisement? Coming out here not knowing what you would find?" Olivia rolled to face him, her hair silver now in the moonlight. "Never. Not once. You saved my life, Samuel. Not just by giving me a place to run to, but by showing me what love actually looks like, what partnership means. You gave me back myself. You did the same for me. I was so lonely before you came. I did not even realize how much I needed someone until you stepped off that stagecoach." He reached out to trace her cheek with his fingers, the gesture as familiar as breathing now. "You are my best friend, my partner, the love of my life. I would do it all again in a heartbeat. Even the part where I nearly jumped off the wagon, even that, especially that, because it taught me to slow down, to be gentler, to think about how my actions might affect someone else. You made me a better man." "Olivia." She kissed him then, with all the passion and tenderness of 25 years together. "I love you, Samuel Dalton. Today, tomorrow, forever. I love you too. Always." They lay together under the stars, two people who had found each other through desperation and built something beautiful through patience and trust and choosing love every single day. The mail-order bride who had flinched at every raised hand had learned to stand tall and unafraid. The cowboy, who had learned to move gentle and slow, had discovered that the strongest thing a man could be was kind. Their story was not without hardship or challenge, but it was theirs, built together one careful day at a time. And as they aged and their children grew and had children of their own, Samuel and Olivia remained what they had always been: partners, best friends, and most importantly, each other's safe harbor in a sometimes harsh world. The ranch continued to prosper under their combined management. James took over more of the daily operations as Samuel slowed down, but the older man never fully retired. He could be found most days riding the fence lines or working with the horses he had eventually started breeding, finding peace in the simple rhythm of ranch life. Olivia established a small school on their property, teaching not just her own grandchildren, but children from neighboring ranches. She had learned the value of education and independence and was determined to pass both to the next generation. Her classroom was patient and kind, much like the woman herself had become, and children who struggled elsewhere thrived under her gentle instruction. On their 30th anniversary, their children and grandchildren gathered at the ranch for a celebration. The original cabin had been expanded so many times it was now a sprawling house, and the barn Samuel had built with his own hands decades ago was surrounded by newer structures. But the heart of the place remained the same, a home built on love and hard work and the determination of two people to build something better than what they had come from. During the celebration, young Catherine, now 27 and recently married herself, asked her mother about the early days. Was it really that hard? The stories father tells make it sound almost romantic, but I know reality is rarely so simple. Olivia looked across the room to where Samuel was holding their newest grandchild, his face soft with joy, and smiled. It was terrifying at first. I was running from something awful and had no idea if I was running towards something better or just different. Your father was a stranger, and I had learned not to trust strangers, especially men. What changed? He did, but not by changing who he was. He stayed exactly who he was, patient and kind and steadfast, until I finally believed it was real. He never demanded anything from me. He just offered over and over until I was ready to accept. Olivia took her daughter's hand. That is what real love looks like, Catherine. Not grand gestures or passionate declarations, but someone who shows up every single day and chooses you, even when it is hard, especially when it is hard. Father says you saved him as much as he saved you. Perhaps we saved each other. I think that is what the best partnerships do. Olivia watched her husband across the room, still in love with him after 3 decades. We gave each other the space to become who we were meant to be, and then we chose to be those people together. That is all any of us can do. As the sun set on that anniversary celebration, Samuel found Olivia on the porch, watching the mountains turn purple in the fading light. He sat beside her, taking her hand, and they sat in comfortable silence, the way they had done thousands of times before. "Happy anniversary," Samuel said softly. "Happy anniversary," Olivia replied. "Thank you for 30 years of happiness, Samuel, for teaching me to trust again, for loving me even when I could not love myself. Thank you for taking a chance on a lonely cowboy's advertisement, for building this life with me, for being my partner in everything." He lifted her hand to his lips and kissed it gently. "I love you, Olivia. More today than yesterday, less than tomorrow." She leaned her head on his shoulder, and they watched the stars emerge one by one, the same stars they had watched that first night in the mountains, the same stars that had witnessed their entire journey together, the mail-order bride and the gentle cowboy, 2 broken people who had found each other and built something whole. Their story had started with fear and desperation, but it had become something beautiful, a testament to the power of patience, the strength of kindness, and the transformative nature of real love. They had built a family, a legacy, a life that would continue long after they were gone. And every evening, as the sun set over the Colorado mountains, Samuel moved with the same gentle care he had learned in those early days, and Olivia no longer flinched, secure in the knowledge that she was loved, protected, and valued beyond measure. They had found their happily ever after, not through magic or luck, but through the daily choice to be kind, to be patient, and to love each other through everything life brought their way. Their grandchildren would tell their story for generations, the tale of the mail-order bride who flinched at every raised hand, and the cowboy who learned to move gentle and slow, and how together they built something that lasted, a love that transcended fear, a partnership that weathered every storm, and a legacy of kindness in a harsh world. As they sat together on that porch, surrounded by the fruits of their shared labor and love, Samuel and Olivia knew they had succeeded. They had taken the broken pieces of 2 wounded lives and forged them into something strong and beautiful and enduring. They had loved well, raised their children with care, and left the world better than they had found it. And when they finally passed, many years later, within months of each other, as longtime partners often do, they were buried side by side on a hill overlooking their valley, their headstones simple but meaningful. James ensured the inscriptions captured who they had been: Samuel Dalton, beloved husband, father, and friend, who taught us the strength of gentleness, and Olivia Dalton, beloved wife, mother, and teacher, who showed us the power of courage. The ranch continued under James's stewardship, then his own children after him, each generation remembering the story of how it all began, with a desperate woman seeking safety and a lonely man seeking companionship, and how they found instead what everyone truly needs: someone to see them, accept them, and love them exactly as they are. The mail order bride who arrived in Fort Garland that hot July day in 1878 had been looking for escape. What she found instead was home, in the arms of a cowboy who understood that the strongest men are those gentle enough to let others heal at their own pace, and the bravest women are those who keep trying despite every reason to give up. Their love story became legend in the valley, told and retold around fires and dinner tables, adapted and embellished, but always keeping the essential truth at its core: that love, real love, is built on respect, patience, and the daily choice to be kind. That healing takes time but is possible with the right person beside you. That the greatest strength is not in dominance but in restraint, not in control but in trust, freely given and carefully kept. The ranch that Samuel and Olivia built together stood for over a century, a physical testament to what two people could create when they worked together with love and respect. And though the buildings eventually crumbled and the land passed to others, the story remained, inspiring new generations to believe in the possibility of healing, of second chances, of finding love in the most unexpected places. Samuel had promised Olivia safety and had given her a home. Olivia had sought refuge and had given Samuel a family. Together, they had built a legacy that transcended the hardships of their beginning, proving that even the most broken among us can find wholeness if we are brave enough to trust again, patient enough to move slowly, and wise enough to recognize love when it appears in unexpected forms. Their story ended not with drama or tragedy, but with the quiet satisfaction of lives well lived, love deeply shared, and a family that would carry their values forward. They had been exactly what each other needed at exactly the right time, and they had made the most of the gift they had been given: each other, the vast beauty of Colorado, and the time to build something that mattered. And so the mail order bride, who had learned to trust again, and the cowboy, who had learned that gentleness was strength, lived out their days in peace and love, surrounded by the evidence of their shared life: children who grew strong and kind, grandchildren who carried their names and their values, and a community that was better for their presence. They proved that broken things can be mended, that fear can be overcome, and that love, when given freely and protected carefully, can transform even the most damaged hearts into something whole and beautiful and strong.